I, 34, female, have an older sister, Carol, 37, female, who's not a very good person. She and I grew up dirt poor because our dad passed away when we were really young, and our mother couldn't be bothered to stop drinking to find a half-decent job that paid well enough. My paternal grandparents wanted nothing to do with us, and my mom was orphaned as a teen, so things were pretty bleak. I chose to work hard to build a future for myself as a high school teacher, but Carol went a different way and chose to work hard to find rich men and baby trap them. She used to work as a bartender at a nightclub, which was frequented by men who worked corporate jobs and were desperate to look younger than they were. That's where she picked up her first husband, and then there was no looking back for her. She has 7 kids and was about to get married for a third time last week. Her oldest child is her 15-year-old son, and her youngest is 4 years old. She had 2 kids with her first husband, a 15-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and then she had triplets, 3 sons with her second husband. All aged 10, and now, with her most recent catch, she has 2 daughters aged 6 and 4 respectively. All her partners have been loaded men in their 40s or 50s, and she's never missed, but her most recent partner was a 40-year-old man, and so he made her wait before jumping at the chance to get married to an attractive woman. Mostly because after 5 pregnancies, my sister looks considerably older, and the fact that she's pushing 40 doesn't help either. She's still pretty for her age, but her fiancé Dean was not really into the idea of marriage anyway, and it took a lot of effort from her end to make him agree to get married to her. I knew her routine though. She'd already baby-trapped him by lying to him about taking the morning after pills, and now they had 2 kids. The next step was to push for marriage, which she'd managed easily with her last 2 husbands, and then within a few months or years, she'd get one of her friends to flirt with him, and of course the man would end up sleeping with her friend instead, and she'd get a crap load of money out of the divorce settlement, alimony and child support. She was a lot more well off than I was, and we kept in touch, but I never took any money from her, and neither did I talk to her more than once or twice a month. Even then, we just talk about visiting Mom, who now lives with her brother. Her brother was the one who took care of us whenever our mother was too drunk, and once we completed our education, or at least I did, my sister skipped college, and decided to move out, he convinced Mom to sell off the house and move in with him and his family. We visited them sometimes, and that's the only time we talk, and that's pretty much it. But then recently she got in touch with me around 2 weeks ago, and she said that she wanted me to babysit her kids for 1 week since she needed to prepare for her wedding. I didn't know how I was going to take care of 7 kids all by myself, but I thought I'd make some extra money, so I agreed to do it for her as long as she paid me for it. I quoted $2,500 for the week, and I think it was a fair demand. I think I might have even been charging less than the real babysitter, but she argued with me, saying that it was way too much, and since I'm her sister, I shouldn't be charging her anything at all. It's not like my sister couldn't afford it, because she's been living with her partners rent-free and makes a ton of money from her divorces. So it seemed uncharacteristically stingy of her to not even pay me $2,500. After some negotiations, she agreed to pay me $1,000 right away, and the rest a day before the wedding, which seemed reasonable to me. So I agreed to watch her kids as she got married. My mother and I have never been invited to any of her weddings because she always insists that it's going to be a private affair. But that's not true. I know that because her past weddings have all been lavish, and she doesn't invite us because she doesn't want us around. That's all it is. I felt bad for the first time, but after that, I stopped caring because she didn't consider us family anymore, evidently, and after that, neither did I. So me agreeing to watch her kids was a purely transactional thing and not something I was doing out of love for my older sister, and I thought she'd realize that. 2 days before she was supposed to get married, I decided to remind her about the money, but then she did 180 and told me that she'd changed her mind and she wasn't going to pay me the rest, and I could consider it part of the wedding gift. I was furious and tried to argue with her, but she told me that she wasn't interested in negotiations anymore and her decision was final. That pissed me off even more, and I decided that I wasn't going to let this slide. I already hadn't been on good terms with my sister after we'd moved out, because as soon as she got a hold of a rich husband, she started burning bridges, and I was the first one she distanced herself from because suddenly we weren't good enough for her to associate with. It was disgusting and shallow, and maybe I do resent her for whatever happened then. I'd been watching over the kids for 3 days already and had even asked my boyfriend to help me out, and I'd overheard 2 of her oldest kids discussing Lucas, name changed. I had my headphones on, so they were whispering about it right in front of me, and they had no idea I could hear them as well. They were talking about how this guy named Lucas hadn't visited to see them like he'd promised, and Carol's second oldest joked that he might show up at the wedding as a waiter like he did the last time. So I came to the conclusion that this Lucas might be some guy that Carol had been seeing for a while alongside her current partner. But I chose to keep my mouth shut because what my sister did was none of my business, never had been, and still wasn't. Her last divorce had been finalized over 2 years back, and neither had I spoken up about her ways back then, nor was I going to do it now. But after Carol decided that she was going to scam me out of the money she owed me, the bitterness just became too overwhelming, and I decided to show up at her wedding. I made my boyfriend stay at home with the kids, drove to the venue, and somehow got a hold of my sister's fiance. I'd seen him in her Facebook photos, so I could recognize him. I made sure my sister wasn't around and the ceremony hadn't begun, and once that was done, I pulled him aside and told him all about Carol. How she scammed and baby-trapped men, and how he'd fallen right into that trap. And I also mentioned what I'd heard her kids talking about and told him to go through her phone, emails, and texts. I couldn't prove the first part since I'd only heard her talk about it once or twice, bragging about how she'd scammed her first husband and now she was going to live a nice life with his money. We were visiting our mom at the time and had to share a room at our uncle's house, and that's how we ended up sharing our lives. I was horrified back then and stopped looking at her the same way since it was just my word against hers. However, I did know that if her fiancé looked through her phone, he might find something suspicious. I'd shown up right in the nick of time, just half an hour before the ceremony was supposed to start. The man looked stunned, but he thanked me for what I told him nevertheless and said that he'd look into it, but I needed to leave right now, which I did. I didn't wait to find out what happened because I knew that eventually my sister would come by and I'd learn all about it anyway. It happened sooner than I'd expected because within an hour or so she'd bombarded me with texts about how I'd ruined her plan and said that I was going to pay for it now. She showed up at my house in the evening and was screaming at me hysterically while accusing me of ruining her life. But I told her to take her kids and leave as fast as she could, or else I'd call CPS. She did leave, and I managed to catch a glimpse of another guy in the car that she'd arrived in, so I guess whatever her kids had been saying had some truth to it. I don't know what the exact situation is until now, but I guess I'll find out. They left with the kids, and I didn't think I'd hear from them later, but I did, last evening itself, almost 2 days after the wedding day. My sister sent me a text saying that now she and her 7 kids were now going to suffer because of what I'd done, since she claimed that she truly loved this guy and didn't have any intention of scamming anyone this time, and was trying to start afresh, but I'd ruined her last shot at redemption. I don't know how much truth there is to that claim, but I also don't have any proof against it apart from whoever I saw in the car the other day. She did seem pretty hysterical when she came back here to pick her kids up, so she might be telling the truth. I don't know. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding? Update 1. Hello, I've decided not to apologize to Carol or say anything to her at all because she's just not worth it. I don't think she ever could change because someone who's only tried to scam men for the last 20 years is capable of just that and nothing more. I spoke to my boyfriend and even he was highly doubtful of whether she was telling the truth or not, especially because of what I told him about there being a potential other boyfriend that she'd been seeing alongside her partner, and the kids seemed to be familiar with this Lucas guy as well. It didn't seem likely that she was in love or loyal to her partner, so I think I just saved the poor guy from being scammed by my sister, and that's what she was so mad about. On another note, my mother has asked me to come visit her, which is weird because she usually never gets in touch with me specifically. She's in her 60s now and likes to be on her own, so I don't know what she might have to say. I just really hope it's nothing related to Carol or the wedding that I ruin, because the last thing I need is a sermon on sibling rivalry, as if I'm a toddler and not an adult woman capable of making my own decisions. Update 2. Hi. So I'm back to talk about my really messed up family because I just learned a couple of things about them that made me realize how I knew absolutely nothing about these people. They're far more insane than I'd expected, and I really just don't know what to think of them anymore. I visited my mother 3 days back and I'm still reeling from that visit because, oh my God, they're messed up. So I'll try to keep it short here, but I'm still struggling to make sense of this huge revelation, and so I'll ask you guys to please bear with me right now. My mother had called me to discuss my sister and her relationship, just like I'd expected, and she told me that I needed to talk to her partner and fix the situation. I was annoyed that she was choosing to take Carol's side and told her the truth as well about how she was nothing more than a gold-digging scammer. But she didn't seem surprised and even said that she knew about all of it, which was a shock to me. And then I got a much bigger shock when she told me that not only was she aware of it, but she was also in on it and was actually being funded by Carol for over the last 10 years. Apparently, Carol would send her uncle money every month to cover Mom's expenses, and so my mom didn't have a problem with whatever she was doing to get that money. Not only that, but she also explained that this Lucas guy had been her boyfriend since her waitress days, and even he was in on my sister's way of life. He was okay with it and was on good terms with all of her kids and was like a father to them himself. Carol really did love Lucas, and I guess he did too. Her kids would live with Lucas in a separate house so that her boyfriends wouldn't find out about the kids. They had a nanny to look after the 7, but unfortunately, their nanny had fallen sick with the flu right before the wedding and couldn't come into work. And neither could Lucas take care of the kids since this was coming at a really bad time for them financially. They'd been living beyond their means for a while now, and so they had to cut costs, which also meant that Lucas had to find a job for himself, or they'd run out of money soon. This is why they asked me to babysit, hoping I'd do it for free, but then I demanded to be paid, and my sister refused to cough up the money I was owed, which is what led to this mess. This was all super crazy, and I was stunned by this information. But that's how it had been ever since the beginning. Everyone had been in on this, and she was funding everyone, my mother, my uncle, and her boyfriend. Apart from me, of course, which I have mixed feelings about. It would have been nice to be taken care of. But my mother admitted that the only reason they never included me was because they didn't want the money to be split even more, and besides, my sister had already told me the truth, but I hadn't made any demands, so they took it for granted that I wasn't going to breathe a word of this to anyone, no matter what. Until I finally did, of course. My mother told me that I needed to do something because this was supposed to be my sister's final husband, since she was getting too old to get rich old men to fall for her, and with 7 kids of her own, she herself didn't want to continue living this way and was genuinely considering turning to more honest ways. This was supposed to be her last husband, and she'd put in a lot of effort to win him over, but he'd cancel the wedding at the very last minute because of what I'd said. Apparently, he hadn't even checked her phone or tried to verify. He just asked Carol about it, and when she denied it, he decided to leave her at the altar and walked off. My mother is desperate and requested me several times to talk to the guy and make sure that he takes her back. I still haven't gotten around to doing anything because this is all just so damn weird and messed up. I don't know what to make of this situation, and I feel like I shouldn't have taken in her kids and agreed to babysit them in the first place. And then maybe I would never be caught up in this mess and would have remained blissfully unaware. But now I can't stop thinking about whatever I've learned, and I feel like I have to do something or else I might go crazy. Update 3. So, as I said, I had to do something, and I ended up visiting Carol's now ex-fiance. I didn't know what I was going to say to him, and my head was completely and totally blank as I was entering his house. My mother had given me the address so that I could go speak to him, and surprisingly he let me in as well, so maybe he wanted to get some things off his chest as well. He was nice to me and even offered me coffee, but I only wanted to talk. Before I could even think things through, I'd asked him why he'd broken off the marriage without even verifying what I'd told him, and he explained that the terrified face that Carol had made the second he'd asked about Lucas was all that he needed to know. He confessed that he'd always felt a little dicey about Carol since she claimed that she had no kids, but sometimes he'd catch her shopping for stuff only kids would need, so he had his doubts, but he never thought to investigate because he was in love with her. But the second I told him the truth about my sister, he realized that he'd been living in a false paradise and decided to dump her then and there. And then I did something that I hadn't even considered earlier. I asked him not to take any legal action against my sister. He looked a little taken aback, but agreed to it since he also wanted to get over all of this as soon as possible, and getting revenge was the last thing on his mind anyway. He didn't want to go after her. He just wanted to stay away, which was fair enough. I knew that my family would be screwed if he decided to come after her with lawyers, and he was a rich guy, so it'd be really bad for my sister and my mother, and I guess me too. I wasn't going to ask him to take her back and fix the situation because I didn't think this relationship was salvageable anyway. I'd kept quiet about my sister's lifestyle for several years, and I was ready to keep it quiet for more because I really just didn't want any more drama. Besides, the first 2 husbands of hers were aged douchebags anyway, and they deserved what they got. But this guy seemed halfway nice, so I guess I did the right thing. I did my sister and my mother a final favor by making sure that he doesn't sue her, but this is it. This is the final favor. I don't think I can in good conscience continue to associate with these people anymore. I've already done enough for them, and I don't think I'm much of a good person either, because I guess I was complicit in helping my sister hide her wrongdoings and justified it to myself by saying that those men deserved it. But that doesn't make me or my sister or my mother any less wrong. All of us are messed up, and that's the reality, but I don't want to do this anymore for my family's sake because this is just so much drama and anxiety. I lead a nice life, and I don't understand why my sister couldn't have done the same for herself, but whatever. I don't want to judge her anymore, and neither do I want to judge my mother. All I can do is cut myself off from them, and that's what I'm going to do. Because that meeting with Carol's ex made me realize that if I wanted out of this mess, then I'd have to cut myself free from these people. There was no other way. I don't even know how I'd held on to them for so long to begin with, given our strained relationship. I guess I just wanted to feel like I still had a family. I don't want that anymore. Update 4. I told my mom today about what I decided. I called her up and let her know that I was going to sever ties with them now, and I would appreciate it if they didn't try to contact me again. I told her about my conversation with Carol's ex, and while he'd reassured me that he won't be suing her, he also wouldn't be taking her back. My mother was obviously really upset that I didn't manage to convince him, but she didn't try to fight and get me to stay. She told me that I was free to choose my path, and if I believed that cutting them off would make me happier in life, then she had nothing else to say. And then she disconnected the call without a word. I wasn't shocked that she didn't seem to care because I knew for a fact that my family was undeniably selfish. And since I couldn't offer them anything, they didn't need me anymore. It was really sad, but I couldn't help it. So there was no point in crying about it either. I also told my sister the same, but I texted her instead since I was in no mood to deal with her hysterics and theatrics on the phone. And she pretty much told me to go to hell. She once again accused me of ruining her life on purpose just because I was jealous and couldn't stand to see her happy. Then she told me that I'd never find anyone to love me because I'm a miserable and bitter woman. She doesn't know I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years straight and we're still going steady. We're even planning to get married in a year or so, but it's fine, I guess. I am kind of disappointed that neither of them seem to care, but I couldn't have expected any better from them either, so this is how it is. On the bright side, I never have to deal with their drama ever again, and she can live it up with her 7 kids. Good luck to them. Update 5. Hello everybody. I'd almost forgotten about this thread because I was using a throwaway account, but I finally remembered the password for it today and decided to give you guys a little update on what I've been up to. It's been almost a year since the last update, and now I'm happily married. I was finally able to move in with my ex-boyfriend, now husband, LOL, a couple of months back. He had to travel a lot for work, but now he's working a desk job, so we thought it was the perfect time to get hitched and live together. He's my family now, and I couldn't be happier about it. I haven't spoken to anyone from my biological family for a year, and I intend on keeping it that way. They haven't tried to reach out to me either, and I'm thankful for that. My husband and I are all we need. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.